Welcome to Famicom RPG Fest. 7 of the next 8 games are ones that people classify as RPGs, though I think a couple of those stretch the definition a bit. And just for some bonus points, that 8th one has a fantasy setting anyways. Now let's see here. Dragon Quest II was released on January 26th. So if we assume it takes a month for the bosses at these game companies to realize that Dragon Quest II is a monster hit, that puts us at almost 6 months on the nose for when this flood starts. From this point on, RPGs are always going to be a major genre on the Famicom. Every game company is going to want to at least have one. And this initial group are the people who rushed in as soon as they realized Dragon Quest was big. And now I have to step back a little bit. From the early 80s, there were 2 computer RPGs that defined the genre: Wizardry and Ultima. The Famicom RPGs we've seen so far have mainly been Ultima inspired. Dragon Quest is very much the structure of Ultima, but replacing the combat with Wizardry's version. But here is the 3rd game in the Ultima series, released without a number on the Famicom, though I believe that Ultima 2 and 3 had already come out for other Japanese computers. Ultima 1 wouldn't be ported to anything in Japan until 1990. They did give it a subtitle though, Kyofu no Exodus, or The Horror of Exodus if you like. Ultima is the brainchild of amateur astronaut and cosplay enthusiast Richard Garriott. He's also infamous for inserting himself and all of his friends into the games. Garriott goes by Lord British, the ruler of the fantasy kingdom in the series. The principle for most of the series is to just give players a big open world, a goal with a handful of other side tasks, and then letting players explore it and make their own way. They are the first open world games. The downside to that was that it could be a little bit difficult to figure out what you needed to do. In fact, one of my very first online posts was asking for some help on beating Ultima 3 for my Commodore 64. The story of this game is that the villains of the first 2 games got together and had a kid. And now that kid has a castle in a lake of fire, on an island that can only be accessed by passing a sea serpent. And as brave heroes, you'll have to gather your strength and defeat this Exodus. The first thing you do once you press start is you have to choose which of 3 save slots you want. One of my favorite things about getting old Famicom games is checking out the save games from the people who owned it before. So let's take a look at what's in these slots. A level 1 party. A level 1 party. A level 1 party. Well, these players didn't make much progress. Let's see if I can outdo them. We need to create characters. You can manually create them, or you can have the game generate them for you. While you don't want to have the game generate them for you, it's convenient for a quick start. Plus, you can scroll through a lot of characters really fast. If I broke down all of the options Ultima gave you, this would be about a 30-minute video. So I'm sticking to a broad overview here. The most important things in your party are a pure class wizard and a pure class cleric. Their abilities are solely dependent upon their maximum intelligence and maximum wisdom scores, and those maximums depend on what race you choose. So you pretty much have to have a Bobbit wizard and a fuzzy cleric. Bobbits being their hobbit stand-in. If you don't go with those 2, you won't be able to get to the upper levels of spells, and you're going to want the upper levels of spells. I guess this is a good point to bring up a few of the odd changes that occurred between the US version of Ultima Exodus and this Famicom port. One of those is fuzzies are called demons in this game, and instead of intelligence you have magical power, and instead of wisdom you have spiritual power. Specifically, Buddhist spiritual power. The party has to have 4 people. What you basically need are 2 meat sacks that are able to shoot ranged weapons. Dwarves have the highest maximum strength, so I put a dwarf fighter up front. And because having somebody to cast a couple utility spells so I'm not wasting the spell points from the casters who can nuke things. I put an elf ranger in the final spot. Now you might be going, why not a thief? All defeated enemies in this game leave behind treasure chests, and the treasure chest could be trapped. So you'll want a thief to open those, right? I mean, it's not like there's a low-level spell that for the cost of taking 5 steps will outdo anything that the thief could do. Yeah, Ultima and Ultima 3 in particular have a bad case of D&D wizarditis. That unfortunate disease where spellcasters render everyone else in the party completely useless. It's especially bad when you consider that the only way to get experience is to be the person who delivers the killing blow to a monster. Now normally you'd think that would give the fighting classes a chance at low levels. Except that the rank 0 spell, so it costs 0 magic, for both wizards and clerics, completely destroy entire classes of monsters. Wizards can completely pop goblins, orcs, and trolls, while clerics can just make the undead evaporate. The downside of those is that they can only be attempted once per combat, and every monster has a chance to avoid getting hit by it. But you did max out the intelligence for your wizard and the wisdom for your cleric when you created your characters, right? Because if you did that, the wizard and cleric are gaining a level about every 6 times that they cast that spell successfully, while your fighting guys have to individually kill about 30 monsters. When wandering the overworld, you'll see monsters walking around, and if you connect with one of those, you go to this tactical map to fight them. Monsters always start out pretty far away from you, so if your big wipe everybody out spells aren't going to work, having ranged weapons is something that you'll definitely want. For that, when we start the game, we're right in between the castle and the town has the shops that we need. So let's go there and go buy some weapons. Don't bother with the armor, you can't afford it. In fact, by the time that you can afford it, you can go talk to the right people in the correct town and get yourself the best armor in the game for free. While in this town, there's something else you should know about. This girl down here is an addition for the Famicom version. She's actually pop singer Noriko Hidaka, who was added into the game as a cross-promotion with her album. The next thing you need to know about is the status bar on the right-hand side of the screen. It pops up if you stand still for a moment. That's your entire party laid out there. Their name. The letters to the right of that give you some information about them. The first letter's their status, G for good, P for poison, D for dead. Then the next letter is if they're male or female. You don't get to choose that in this game, it's assigned based on your class. This actually has absolutely no bearing on anything in the game, so I'm not sure why they kept it, other than the original Ultima 3 let you have it because it was a character creation option. The next letter is the race, D for dwarf, E for elf, F for fuzzy, B for bobbit, H for human. There's no humans in my party because humans can't reach a 99 stat. The last letter is the class. Below that we have hit points and magic points. The F number below that is how much food they have. Food is always ticking down as you explore, and you'll have to do some grocery shopping from time to time to make sure you don't run out. Finally, you have your level. While you're walking around, pressing A brings up a menu. It's actually a 2-page menu, and you have to press select to go between pages. Talk is an obvious one. And below that is magic. Ultima will always let you cast a spell, even in a situation where it isn't appropriate, so it's very easy to waste some magic accidentally. But you get a magic point back every time you take a step, or take a turn in combat. Fight lets you start a fight with someone. And I mean anyone. Let's go beat up Lord British, huh? Well, obviously that doesn't work. But there is a way that you can kill him in this game. If you just beat up some random townspeople, the guards in town will come after you. And you have to be pretty high level to be able to take them out. Status shows you your party, and it's where you go to change out your equipment. Tools is where you go to use a special item you've picked up. And Give lets you transfer those around between characters. Get will pick up a chest from the ground, and the stairs command will let you go up or down in a dungeon. On the second page, food is for transferring food between characters. Gold does the same with gold. You can purchase horses to ride around in this game, and horses will let you manage that. Finally, order will let you switch which positions your characters are in. You'll find dungeons dotted around the landscape. You can go down in those, and they're explored from a first-person view. The reason you need to explore them is that they're the key to gaining marks, which you have to accumulate in order to power up all the way. However, you're going to want to gain a few levels before you start exploring dungeons. The monsters are a step up there. There's a lot of little things to find in Ultima. You might spot moon gates if you're in the right spot at the right phase of the moon, or catch a glimpse of a town that's only there some of the time. There's pirate ships, and this whirlpool that will suck you away to another kingdom, hidden valleys that lock away secrets. The world isn't particularly large, but there's a lot to do, especially compared to previous RPGs we've seen on the Famicom. The big problem with Ultima is that it's a pretty bad port. They had to simplify the interface for the console, but they did it in pretty much the worst way possible, with options that don't really mean what they seem to. Why would you go to status to change your equipment, for example? Why are there 3 different methods of handing things between characters? Why leave the option to attack people in at all? And then there's the visual glitches. Between the flickering characters when they're all lined up in a row, which they will be because you'll walk in a straight line, and the occasional line that just shows up, this feels like it was shoved out the door to try to beat everybody else. The 6-month deadline hit and it had to ship. A lot of that was cleaned up in the US version, but it's still not a great port. Still, it was a bit easier to understand than the computer versions, where Garrett would have every key on the keyboard assigned to a unique function. This was a pretty big hit in Japan, too. There was even a comic adaptation of this game, which is currently stuck in customs for me. As for myself, though, I think I'm still going to stick to a computer version. There's just too many rough edges on the Famicom one.